Hello, my name is Barbara Thompson, and this is my presentation for Personal and Social Ethics. When I began this class, I didn't know what to expect, but I was excited because Mere Christianity was one of our textbooks, and it's long been one of my favorites. And I learned a lot of really good information. I learned an ethical decision-making process, which we will look at more closely with our case study. But one of the first things that I learned was the difference between morality and ethics. Like most people, I use them interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Morality, according to Scott Ray, the author of Moral Choices, our textbook, morality is the end result of ethical deliberation, the substance of right and wrong. So morality is the content of right and wrong, but ethics is the process that we use to determine right and wrong. And everyone has a starting point for determining right and wrong, and that starting point is our worldview. Our worldview can be looked at like our contact lenses or glasses that we view the world through. It brings it into sharper focus, but we're looking at it from that particular perspective. And every one of us has a worldview, and most of them, they can be divided into two basic types: Christian or theistic, which has God at its base, or secular, which has any number of different things at its base. The Christian or theistic type are grounded in the nature and character of God. They're concerned with the principles that we live by, as well as the motives behind those principles. And those systems rest on God as that ultimate authority. He created the world, He created humanity, and He is the author of the book, the inventor of the machine, and He's the one that sets the rules and the absolutes for how the world and humanity should operate. And when He created us, He did it in His own image and placed within us that knowledge of right and wrong and the choice to choose one or the other. And He gave us that free choice, and most of us don't even realize that it's operating within us. But C.S. Lewis called it the law of nature, or the moral law, and he termed it this way: the moral law is about what we ought to do. And another feature of Christian ethical systems is that they're concerned not only with our actions, but the motives behind our actions, not just what we do, but the kind of people that we are. Secular worldviews or ethical systems have no objective base, no absolute authority behind them. It's all subjective. Some of the ones we looked at were egoism, which puts a person squarely at the center of his own universe. What I want is the most important thing, and nobody else is to be concerned with. Utilitarianism can be summed up by the phrase, the end justifies the means. That is, as long as the end result is good, the action or decision is a moral one, regardless of who is hurt. Emotivism, just like its name sounds, is concerned with people's emotions, and that how we feel about something, it determines its morality. If it feels good, do it, might be a good way to phrase it. And relativism, which is the prevailing ethical system that isn't operational now, is that everything is relative. There are no moral absolutes. Ray puts it this way: what's right for me is right, and what's right for you is right. So there's no absolute truth, no ultimate authority. And Christian ethics has got not only the nature and character of God, but He has revealed Himself to us through His Word, through the natural order of creation and the moral law, and the Holy Spirit. And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says that God created humanity in His own image. Not only did He create us in His image, in Psalm 139, it says that He made each one of us. He fashioned us together. And as such, He knows what we're supposed to be like. He knows what we're capable of, and He knows the best way to run the human organism or the human machine. And then we have a duty then to obey that. Just like you wouldn't put water in your gasoline engine and expect it to run. We were created, according to C.S. Lewis, to run on God. And we won't run well on anything else. That's why he commands us to love him and obey his commands in Deuteronomy 6. And then to also love and obey and love our neighbor as ourselves in Matthew 7:12. And when we do those things, when we abide in him, then we will develop godly character, like it says in Galatians 5:22-23, that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, and so on. Those will develop and continue to grow in us, and we will take on more and more of the image of Christ. And Lewis put it this way: God looks at you as if you were a little Christ. Christ stands beside you to turn you into one. Now, some of the ethical issues that we looked at through the course of our class, I have very strong feelings about, and they kind of come under the heading of the sanctity of human life. And when you look at these issues, if you look at it through a Christian worldview, that we are made in God's image, there are certain things that just cannot be considered ethical or moral, and that should not be allowed. If you look at it from a secular worldview, that humanity is the end result of evolution, and so human life has no more value than that of any other animal, you're going to take a different view. And these issues are no big deal. But the ones that concern me the most are on either end of the lifespan. The first two are abortion and embryonic stem cell research. Abortion is the ending of an unborn life, willfully, usually because the child is not wanted in one form or fashion. Embryonic stem cell research involves the harvesting of cells from the smallest and most vulnerable of unborn life, and in the process discarding the part that's not going to be used. It's treating human beings like they are disposable commodities that can just be thrown away if they're burdensome or inconvenient, or in the utilitarian view of embryonic stem cell research, but we might be able to save lives of different people suffering from Parkinson's and other diseases if we do that. It's still killing an innocent human life. And with a Christian ethical view, it's not right. It's not moral. The other two issues that I'm concerned about are on the opposite end of the lifespan, usually. Physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. And physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia share this commonality. They are the practice of hastening death, either by the assistance of or the direct action of a doctor or other person. And once again, that's treating a human being like its life has no value and can be thrown away. And in countries where assisted suicide starts, voluntary euthanasia continues that progress down the slope, and it always leads to involuntary euthanasia, and that is the situation in the Netherlands now. In fact, in 1990, they averaged 3 people a day who were involuntarily euthanized, and those statistics scare me when you consider that was 24 years ago. And this, to me, is a very cut and dried black and white issue. These are human beings. This is human life. It is sacred because it was made in the image of God, and we don't have a right to tamper with that. The case study I chose to come up with is a woman who has had prenatal testing, and the tests indicate that her unborn child has Down syndrome, and she's considering abortion. To help her resolve this dilemma, these are the steps that Ray outlines for making ethical decisions. The first one is gather the facts. She's had prenatal testing now that indicates that there might be Down syndrome. She's considering abortion because of that. The ethical issues that need to be determined are the child's right to life versus the woman's right to personal autonomy or to have a say as to what happens to her body. The values or principles involved that need to be determined are the sanctity of life, human life, the personhood of that child, and the right of self-determination of the woman. The alternatives are simple. She can kill the child. She can give birth to the child and place it up for adoption, or she can give birth to the child and keep it. These alternatives, there really is no comparison because the sanctity of human life trumps any right of self-determination that the woman has. The child is fully human from the moment of conception, therefore it is a person, and it has all the rights and privileges that any person has and should also have the protection of law. It is a separate life with its own DNA, and it is not part of the woman, so she should not have the right to determine whether it lives or dies. And one of the consequences that has to be faced is genetic testing is not infallible. There's a between 5 and 15% false positive rate or inaccuracy rate. And that's too great a risk that you might kill a child that there's absolutely nothing wrong with. And we really need to keep it in those terms. It is killing a child, just like physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia, stem cell research. They are all murder. They may be legal, but they're not right. Just because something is legal does not make it moral. Slavery was once legal too. The one issue that I am still undecided on is that of capital punishment. God did set out in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made man. God set that up as the ultimate penalty. In the Bible, there's a very high standard of proof that we in our society today don't follow. There had to be at least 2 eyewitnesses to the crime for someone to be executed. And now we have a burden of reasonable doubt. And that has made that there have been innocent people executed through the course of history. And there have been people on death row that have been exonerated through DNA evidence. Also, in biblical times, the death penalty was seen as a deterrent, that people would hear and fear and would no longer do those sorts of things. But in our society, the length of time, on average, that a defendant is on death row from the time that he's sentenced to the time that he's executed is 14 years. That's not a deterrent to crime. So until there are changes in the way that capital punishment is administered in the United States, I don't think that it should be used. In conclusion, we are in a culture war. There are 2 opposite sides, 2 opposite ethical viewpoints or worldviews that are in collision, basically. There's a choice that society has to make between a biblical worldview with God as the center or a secular worldview. God gave us that free will and that ability to make choice. We don't always make the right choices. But as we continue to make ethical, correct choices, it builds us into a certain people that have a quality of character. But I want to conclude with this thought. I don't know where I found it, but I think that it sums up perfectly what we're looking at. Freedom is the opportunity to make decisions. Character is the ability to make right decisions. No one learns to make right decisions without being free to make wrong ones.